Okay, we are here. We are recording. Welcome to the Mind Body Energy Project. Happy Wednesday. I feel like we haven't done a live event. That's what it is. We haven't done a live event in a minute because last week we had to do a pre-recorded because of the holiday.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, that's what it was. So anyway, sorry that we didn't give anyone a heads up that tonight was going to be live. Hopefully some of you will catch it and see us.
Yeah, we sent out some telepathic messages.
Yeah.
Hello, we'll see who got them.
Yeah. So what Tiffany and I talked about last time, hopefully you had an opportunity to check out the podcast. We talked about overwhelming gatherings. And for all of our Patreons, in case you guys haven't checked yet, your Dear Diaries and the energy of the month for December is already up for you guys. So, okay. So after that week of overwhelming gatherings, I know you were in South Carolina. Is that where you went?
Yes, the week before Thanksgiving, I was in South Carolina.
Yeah. So how has your week been, doll?
This past week, it's been interesting just trying to get back into the swing of things. And also felt like I needed a little bit more time off.
Yeah.
To gather myself.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so funny. I always think that, like, why we always need vacation after vacation, but it's exhausting traveling, like whether it's the airport situation, packing and then going through the different time zones.
Yeah, it was a little extra hard too going away before the holiday because it was like I came back and had 3 days of work and then went right into this strange time of holidays and breaks and then back into work only to take the break coming up in 3 weeks or so.
Right. Well, I'm really excited for that one. I'm trying to I just want to see my little crystal. Okay.
It's really beautiful.
I love it. Thanks, Jen. Okay, so anyway, so we talked about the overwhelming gatherings, and I have to say that it actually helped me because, I had some gatherings in that week after we did the episode, and all of the things that we talked about really supported me. Like every conversation we have, it's always at the forefront of my mind the following week. But what's so funny is, and we've said this before, every topic we have, whatever we talk about, it's like it then comes up in our life and we're like, oh my gosh. So I was so glad that we did it. But that reminds me, after this, today is the last one about gatherings. And today we're going to talk about the power in numbers, because there is an upside in coming together with a lot of people and community and how that can amplify energy and be useful to us in some ways. But before we get to that, I just want to point out that we didn't forget that we had a request to do an episode about connecting with our guides and this type of thing. So maybe that'll be our next cycle.
Yeah.
Down for that?
I am, always.
Okay. So let's talk about it. So power in numbers, one of the things first that pops in mind to me for that is I always think about when I first started energy work and meditation, when I would go to group events, everything felt so intense and amplified, it felt like I could connect really quickly and all of the energy in the room because everyone was doing the same thing. Everything literally, like the frequencies were amplified. And science is even proving that now. So you can look that up, that when we come together in numbers, it does amplify the energies of the room. But so when I first started in all of this, those group events were very beneficial in that it felt like it was easier for me to make that connection to something. What about you?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, even just noticing when I try to get motivated to do something on my own, it's hard. And I have to literally get out of my house. I mean, I love where I live and it's my little cave and it's my little sanctuary, but sometimes it's really hard to drum up the motivation only for myself. And I can just go into a coffee shop where other people are doing work and then I can focus better. And yoga classes, meditation classes, anytime I ever do anything where there's more people in it, it usually is 1,000 times better. Sometimes we tend to think like the more bodies there are in an area, the harder it would be to concentrate, but sometimes it's easier to concentrate. It's easier to focus.
You know,
Depending on what it is. A concert's a different story. But
yeah, it depends on the type of energy that's being.
yeah.
But I mean, that's interesting you say that, because even at coffee shops, and you see so many people focused on whatever their thing is, whether they're studying or working on something, but everybody is in the same type of concentration. So I wonder if that's the thing too. Like, if you go into a space, and if you think of how we all impact each other, right? We feel each other and we click into each other's energy streams, so to speak. If you are in a place where everyone has such directed focus, like maybe that in itself would, like, why wouldn't it help you also to have that kind of focus?
Yeah, perhaps it's a different frequency too. And the
Yeah.
intention behind it, maybe when there's an intention, they always hit like the same frequency. Whereas if you're out at a concert, you're at a party, everybody has different intentions and they're getting all haywire and chaos.
Right.
So maybe it doesn't line up.
You know, it's also making me think of motivational speakers. So have you ever seen people who are motivational speakers? And if you really pay attention to it, it's just simply their energy and the way they're projecting their energy, and they get everyone else riled up. And then the next thing you know, the whole room is like, ah, and it feels so amazing. And people say like, oh my God, it was so intense. It was so amazing. But it's because you're in a room full of people like in this lifted, excited frequency.
Yeah, that makes me think of church.
Oh, right.
Different types of churches.
Yes. Yeah, no, that's so true.
And even, dare I say it, but things that are not so positive experiences, you know, when groups get riled up, it's still a frequency and of an intention that's similar, and it raises the vibration.
So maybe that's the thing, right? The intention behind the frequency. So if you're thinking of even something that you want to do, like at this time years ago, I wanted to write a book about energy healing and all this stuff. And now, like years later, I'm actually going to do it. But I did this class that was a book writing class, but it was specific to intuitive writing. And because I was in the space with other people with that focus and that intention, it also helped me feel supported in doing that particular thing. So I say that to say, anytime where we feel stuck or we're having a hard time doing something, whether study or whatever it may be, if you go to an environment where there are multiple people doing that thing, even like a meetup group or something, that may help.
Yeah, I like that you brought up the writing thing, because one of my good friends is a writer, and they do writers groups, and she invited me to this one time, and they do prompts. So they pick out like a line from a book or a fortune cookie, and that's their prompt to free write. And I was in a room with, I mean, there was like 4 of us, but the other 3 were writers. They're schooled and educated in writing, and they write like fictional novels, like based on reality. And I have no education in this at all. Like I learned math and biomechanics, but I wrote a piece just like they were doing off of this one topic. And when I finished it, I was shocked. I was like, oh, that's pretty good. I mean, it wasn't in their realm of stuff. It was more in the spiritual realm. So I don't know what they thought of it, but myself, I went back and read it a couple times. I'm like, that's pretty damn good. I didn't even know where that was coming from, but it was part of emerging myself into a group that's like-minded.
Well, you saying that too, it kind of goes into another component of this, which is just the aspect of community and support. So a lot of times too, I think we have a hard time doing whatever it is we want to get done, whether it's writing a book or meditating. Like, sometimes people say, I don't have time or I can't do it, but they'll make time to go to yoga class or they'll make time to do other things. Sometimes just having that community and that support, you find a way to make time, and I think it also encourages us, again, like that power in numbers, and you have this camaraderie and everyone is like, just encouraging each other. I think that in of itself kind of draws us into getting certain things done.
I think that's huge, because one of the things I know I struggle with is that I will procrastinate. I'll find time to go to a yoga class before I build out time to write, because part of the writing is that I'm going to critique myself, or I'm not going to know what I'm doing, or I'm not going to have support or somebody to bounce questions off. Right. But if I'm held accountable and there's other people that are going to be doing the same thing, then I kind of almost know they're in the same boat as me. They're probably having the same struggles, but we're there doing it together.
That reminds me of something we talked about before, like how sometimes we are more inclined to help other people. Like it may sometimes be harder for us to show up for ourselves, but we'll help other people. And I think sometimes too, in that group environment, like that community, again, that whole support system, if you feel like you are part of helping somebody else, even that will encourage you to show up. And, by default, of course, you get supported as well too. And it's funny that we're talking about this now. I think about it because it kind of goes with our energy update that we did, and just thinking about all of the goals and intentions and things we say and start to think about at the end of the year, like what we want to do in the new year. If there are things on your list that you've been procrastinating about, this might be a good way to support you. Find a group, find a community of people that are interested in the same thing.
Yeah. And figure out the why, like why you want to do it, which would push you a little bit further to actually find the group that will support.
Yeah, totally. So another aspect of this is that it helps us to also get insight from others. So back to like the energy work, and even like I have a private Facebook group for energy healers. And what's interesting is one of the powerful things about groups, and also the numbers of the group, is you then have exposure to so many different points of view, so many different experiences, and other people may have ideas for you that you've never considered. And other people may have, experiences that validate your own to help you trust yourself. So I also like that component, like the insight that you can get from other people when you decide to come into some kind of group.
As you're saying that, it's making me think about how we kind of raise the vibration together when there's value added things that people have that we don't have, because then our brain starts to fire. And when our brain starts to fire in different ways, it's raising our energy and shifting our vibration to something higher. So it's almost like inevitable to not be able to raise the vibration if you're with other people who are adding different aspects that you didn't have before.
Yeah. And that's like the whole genius behind mastermind groups, right? I mean,
exactly.
Yeah. So it's like one of those things. If there's a project or something that you want to work on, you might want to find or create a mastermind group around your particular focus or whatever it is you're trying to work on. I have to say though, would you do that? Because I do think of that sometimes. I'm actually doing one the beginning of 2019, it's kind of a mastermind, not really, but whatever. But I think about that sometimes, like, oh, I'm curious about this thing. I want to invite in a group of people to come in and like see what happens when we all kind of dive into this thing. But a lot of times I talk myself out of it.
Why do you talk yourself out of it?
The introvert in me is like,
oh, I see. I understand.
And too, like, like the part too of like thinking like if you had a party and invited people and nobody showed up, you know what I mean? Like there's that part too, like what
that's a big part. I did actually try to start a writers group. And I had an outline. I was like, we're all going to fill this out and then we're going to help each other like build our goals for next week. And it was, the first meeting was great. And then we just couldn't get it together and nobody showed after that. I was like, nobody wants to do anything good with their lives. I jumped to extremes, but yeah, it is. But I have done other types of mastermind groups before and they really are great.
Yeah. No, they I mean, they can be very helpful again, because you have these insights from all these different people and, like the ideas just start bouncing all over the place and it's like magic.
And it keeps you honest.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, totally. But it reminds me of too, when I started, not when I started energy work, but when I started offering services outside of like my local community. When I first decided to go online, and this was years ago, okay, this was, what do you call those things? They weren't webinars like this. It was just the audio teleconference. And so it was just like, these things you dial in and like, it's like a party line and people can listen to whatever it may be, but it was no visual at all, no video. So that was the thing back then. It sounds so ancient, but it was like 10 years ago. So anyway, when I first started, I was so excited, like, oh, I'm going to do these teleseminars and I'm going to have them be free and just share with everybody everything I'm learning. Like, yeah, this is going to be fun. I didn't have anything. Like, I had no list, no anything. So like I would go to different, there were different like groups back then. I forget what you call them. Kind of like, not like Facebook groups, but whatever was before then, like those other, I don't know.
Online?
Yeah, they were like
a
online.
forum?
Yes, forums. There you go. So I would go to these different forums that were about energy work and stuff, and like chat with people and like invite people to the teleseminars. And like the first couple ones that I did, nobody showed up. Like no one at all. And I was like, okay, so what am I going to do? And I ended up just doing the presentation that I planned anyway, because it gave me practice. So I was like, just keep practicing. And yeah, a couple times no one showed up. Finally, people started showing up. So my point in that is, if you do want to create a group and your first attempt, nobody shows up, keep at it, because, you know, we have to be persistent, and at some point they may come.
I think that brings up a good point, since we're talking about the power of gathering, and the fact that we can be in situations that there's groups of people and sometimes they're not what we want them to be, or we're disappointed by something, and that can kind of turn us into hermits.
Yeah.
You know, we start to shun being out in big groups for whatever reason. And then we start to lose sight of the power of gathering and the good intent of gathering. Yep. So I think that's a really great point to raise.
Yeah. And, you know, it's one of those things too, especially, this is coming to mind, I don't know why, but it's almost like, you know, when you are interested in something, whether it's like you want to learn, you want to build, you just want to explore, whatever, and you do go to other groups or you do go to other classes and you're disappointed all the time because something's missing. It's like whatever that component is that you think is missing, that thing that you wish people were talking about, but nobody is talking about, there's other people, believe me, out there who want to talk about the same thing. So you can even create groups based on that, like the missing components of whatever it is you're looking for. And, you know, that's also a good way to create like new communities without being, you know, trying to connect in a like genres or whatever that are oversaturated. Like, be very specific about what it is that you're trying to learn, and then invite people.
That's a good point. It's making me think about what I need to do with my stuff.
Good.
Because like we said in the energy update, it's time to start focusing, getting your life together.
Yeah. And honestly too, I mean, the power in numbers, I mean, since we're talking about it, that is what has shifted my own like business and like what I want to put out there. And, you know, it all changes over the years, but the more I started interacting with other people and like even what we're doing now, like building community, and like we get to bounce ideas off of each other and hear what people are interested in, it does also give you some insight of like, oh, this is what people want to know and this is what everyone is interested in. So why not? Let's all come together and talk about this stuff. And I think it really speaks to that part of us that is so communal, but then we all kind of thrive on, you know, feeling seen and heard and understood and finding those commonalities and like, oh, you are interested in what I'm interested in. So, you know,
it makes me think of like tribes, you know, back in the day when there were just tribes, how everybody had what they did in their village. And my friends and I joke about living on a commune and what each one of our roles would be. I obviously would be a spiritual healer. That's my job. And everybody has their own specific roles.
Just side note, I would want you to be the chef if you were in my tribe.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I probably would also be the healthy chef in my friend group's tribe. Yeah. Or at least like the delegator of the how-tos. Anyways, I was thinking, it made me think about how the internet and travel and just how we've evolved has created so much more openness to find new tribes, but at the same time, because that's so saturated and everything's so diffused, that we might start to feel more alone because we don't have that community that's kind of forced upon us. Like there is a community that needs to thrive, and it's a tribe, and everybody does what their job is, because we didn't have these outward communications that the internet and travel give us now. But now that we have that, we could either, we have the access to either create great communities or to be non-existent at all.
You know, it's so funny while you're saying that, the word that popped into mind is like pods. Like we get to create all these little pods, all these little communities, and then it's like, oh, podcast. Exactly what we're doing.
Look at that.
Yes, we have our own little pod.
Mm-hmm.
Podcast. Yeah,
come into our pod.
Community. Come into our pod. Welcome to the pod. But yeah, so one of the things too that I think is really interesting about it though is, I mean, and I'm sure you would love it, and maybe it's something we'll look up and share with our Patreons for you guys, your extra bonus content about this, is really like the scientific research that has been done to show the effect of numbers. Even it makes me think of that. What is that one thing, that one study, the 100th monkey?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like something like that. Or even how we've talked about before, like if you're feeling happy and then someone comes into the room and they feel like crap, and then it takes down, just for two people, like energy is shifting, like a whole shift can happen. But if you have a bunch of people, and again, they all have that singular pointed intention or focus or lifting or whatever it is they're trying to do.
So I have a funny little story about this. When I did my very first teacher training, a woman came in to do the crystal bowls. So she was talking about the vibration of the bowls, and she brought up the word entrainment, which is to, like, if you're up here, you're going to, you know, you're happy and you're feeling good and you walk into your room. If you can keep that, people will meet you there.
Right.
Should they be open to it? But if you feel they're here and you bring yourself down, can't do that as a teacher. So that was kind of what she was teaching us. But I had this little money tree, just this tiny little money tree, and it wasn't doing so hot. So I bought a bigger money tree. And the bigger money tree I put right next to the little one. And I put a picture of it on my Instagram on Mind Your Chakras, probably like over a year and a half ago now. But this little tree was dying and I was so sad. So I bought a big tree because I tried to save it and it just wasn't having it. So I bought this big tree. And after a while, this little tree, it's like it took the encouragement from the big tree, and it's been blossoming ever since I put the big tree there. So it's like my little money tree was trying to entrain to the big tree, and it was getting inspired by the big one.
See, that's really, really cool though. But I think that, I mean, obviously that's a really good example of what happens to us. Did you just, no, you're here, of what happens to us. And it's funny what you said, what the teacher was trying to teach you. That's exactly why I love energy work. And that's why, you know, I think it is so important for people to learn how to manage their own field so that you can choose consciously to stay lifted instead of not managing your space and coming down to what other people may be feeling.
Hi, Bryn.
Hi, Bryn. Oh, we're excited to see you here, honey. We're talking about the power in numbers, what happens when we all come together.
Yeah, look how happy we just got.
I know, now that you're here, you shifted the mood for us. Like live evidence of what happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think it's really important that we learn to do that. And even having that mindfulness of, you could like walk around as like a conscious lifting mechanism. You know what I mean? And you don't know who you may impact. I mean, just by holding that space or frequency of love, and you walk by someone on the street, you may literally help to shift their day or their mood or their moment and never even know it. So I mean, it's a powerful thing. But then, but when we come in numbers, obviously amplified. But do you know that have you seen when they do those global meditation challenges?
I don't know. Talk to me more about it.
So sometimes there will be, well, Deepak and Oprah did one before. Like they,
of course they did.
I think it was years ago. I don't know if they do it anymore, but I've also seen where there are monks who have these certain, I don't know if they are specific days or why it's done, but there are these global meditation events where, you know, people will know the time and date of when everyone is supposed to pause and just hold a certain frequency, like hold the vibration of love for the entire planet.
Oh, I want to do that.
Yeah, you can look it up. They do events like that all the time, and it's really powerful. And I remember vaguely, so, you know, look it up. Don't go with what I'm saying right now. But I remember vaguely years ago that there's this machine that literally like measures the frequency of our planet all the time. And at the time where all of these monks did this particular like global huge meditation thing, it actually shifted
I
the
love that.
frequency of the planet. Yeah.
I love that the scientists on one side are trying to like measure it. They're like, okay, let's see if there's actually something. The monks are like, we don't give a F. We're just going to do this because it's what's good for the planet. We already know.
We already
you know. Whatever you
know.
want, but we already know what it's doing. So we're
Yes.
going to go about our business,
Isn't that
wearing our robes, doing our
just
malas.
being love like we could all do every day walking down the street?
Yep.
Bryn said, I was just talking with someone today about how amazing / difficult it can be being so sensitive to energy. Like it's such a blessing and a gift to be empathic, but also so overwhelming at times.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about that in groups.
Oh, yeah.
We did a whole podcast on empathy, right? And being an empath.
But in groups, yeah. You have a story that's brewing?
No, I don't have a story that's brewing because it's just essentially like my entire life. But I do find it interesting that sometimes when you're in large groups, like, yes, when it can be super overwhelming, but then at the same time, sometimes you get like these feelings that aren't necessarily yours.
Yeah.
And it's hard to decipher that sometimes. Now, if they're feelings of joy, I'll take it, you know. There's one of my friend's weddings very specifically where I remember feeling everybody's joy and happiness, and it was an amazing moment.
Well, you know, interestingly, and this might be shocking to people, I am most protective of my energy, I guess you would say, in environments around other energy workers.
I can understand that.
Yeah, because what I found is, like, say if you just went to the mall, right? There's a lot of energy going on, but 9 times out of 10, there aren't a lot of people in there who are like trying to peek at you energetically or like read you intuitively and all these things. Now, just as a disclaimer, I do not read people without permission. I do not do it. I have no interest in it. If I'm not in a session with you, I am not interested. Like, not at all. But there are people out there who they just do, like they like to read people randomly, and they like to like poke in people's spaces, and some people do it even unconsciously, but there are a lot of people who do it intentionally. So sometimes, so for example, this one time I went to it was like a psychic expo, and it was like one of those events where they have a bunch of booths set up, and there's energy healers, psychics, like everybody in this realm of, you know, whatever. And people are doing mini sessions and giving lectures and selling all kinds of things. And it was my first time going. And so being naive, I kind of was just like, oh, I'm going to a place with a bunch of healers, like safe, great. Everybody's light and love. No. When I tell you, I came out of that place and had a headache like I had never had in my life. Like, my head never felt like it was going to fall off like this before. And so when I got home and I was working on myself energetically, and I was like, I realized like, oh my gosh, I had so many different encounters with people who were like energetically just trying to get in everyone's space, not just mine. You know what I mean? So yeah, it can be, and that aside, the groups that you're in basically is what I'm trying to get at. Depending on the type of group, you may want to be more mindful about your field and staying lifted and managing your space, because if you're around a bunch of people who are all peepers,
It's funny you say that because normally when I'm in that setting, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm like, take a peek in here. I know what's in here. Let's see if you see it.
No.
But then they tell me things and I'm like, oh no, that's not right. But maybe I have like, I let them in with like a certain armor, maybe like a see-through armor. Maybe I have to figure it out. But normally I walk in there and I'll like, yeah, tell me what you see. Because I know what it is. Let's see if you're right.
But the thing is that, I mean, with that, and I guess it is something we can even talk about one day, like do a whole separate podcast about, as I learned that too. Like, you know, I thought in this realm, like everybody was on the whole light and love bandwagon. Like I didn't know. I didn't know that there are some people who, you know, do this work and they are on a whole nother get down, which obviously makes sense, but it didn't occur to me. And there's also the side that there are people in this realm that do this work who may have this conscious intention of light and love, but they may still have a lot of things in their space that are happening that you don't want to mess with. So, you know, like, listen, all I know is in all gatherings, if you're going to a place where the intention is to lift vibration, it can amplify group and numbers. Howsoever, still be mindful of your own field always, no matter where you go.
Should we talk about how operating in groups, when for the most part they're good, but then there's that one that tries to throw the energy off?
I was
Have
trying
you experienced
not to tell that story.
That
was actually the first story.
No, I'm in your head.
I know. When Bryn said that, the first story that popped to mind, I was like, I don't want to tell that story.
Give it to us.
So again, this is like many moons ago. My friend and I, she's also an intuitive energy worker, all this, blah. So we were interested in this particular group of people who study, they were like an esoteric group, whatever. And so we were interested in like what they teach or talk about. So we went to one of their meetings, which was, you know, it's like free to the public. You could come and hear about their practices and what they do. So we went to a couple of them and they were, you know, it's like interesting. Okay, fine. So then one day, maybe it's like the third time going, we go and everyone there, they're interesting. There's definitely a group dynamic energy to these people, which may be, you know, rooted in the work and practices that they do. So there was an obvious group frequency with them. And so my friend and I were just kind of like observing it all and like, oh, it's interesting. So this one day, another girl comes in who's also like, you know, just a visitor like my friend and I were. So she comes in and she has on these dark, like blacked out glasses. And it's like, I mean, we're inside. And this was at the beginning of me doing energy work. And I really hadn't worked through my own little like witchy streaks yet. So I was still very reactive and like, I still had a lot of work to do.
I love how you keep looking away.
Because I would never have responded in this way today. Anyway, so we're sitting there. So the girl comes in and sits directly across from my friend and I. And I was listening to the lecture that was being given, but for some reason, like I kept being drawn to this girl who walked in. And for some reason, it was like not even processing thought, nothing. Something in me knew she was like energetically trying to do something to my friend.
Was she still having her son? Did she still have her son?
No, she never took them off. She never took them off. And so I knew she was trying to do something energetically to my friend in this like inner like part of me that I have done a lot of work on. But back then, this inner part of me was just like, and like energetic. When I tell you, I went into energetic, like Xena warrior goddess mode, just like, but without thought, I'm not even going to tell you what I'll tell you behind the scenes. I don't want to talk about it.
Will you tell us what the result was?
The result was she got up and left.
Oh.
Yes. And what was funny is as soon as she got up and left, my friend looked at me and said, thank you. Had no idea. We didn't say a word to each other.
Wow.
We didn't, nothing. We didn't say a word to each other. And as soon as the girl got up and left, my friend said, thank you. And then of course, when the thing was over and we got in the car, she was like, girl, can you believe it? I can't believe it. I knew my sissy was on it. And yeah. So, man. Yeah, yes, Bryn, that should have been my first sign, those glasses. But
Yep.
yeah. How did we get here?
Because I posed the question about
Dang it.
gatherings when there's one that sticks out that can potentially shift the energy of all of it.
Yeah, she tried it. But a lot
Yeah.
of people can't. So, I mean, just to say too, I have been and I have witnessed where there are people who do things energetically to other people, like literally, like energetically push people, or like energetic, like to where like you'll physically move, or like energetically make you drop something from your hands. Like people do a lot of things like energetic manipulation. It's no joke. So, I mean, it's real. Like, I wouldn't have believed these things had I not seen them and witnessed it myself. But people do a lot of things with energy that's not just like, oh, let me love you.
Oh yeah. Well,
Oh,
and I think a lot of people don't even understand it. Some may,
mm-hmm.
but again, it's the lack of understanding of how powerful we actually are, and a misunderstanding of our ego.
Yeah.
And when fear plays a factor in all of it too, then we have the capacity to utilize energy for not great things.
I will say that's one of the things I strongly believe. Like, and my friend, the same friend I'm talking about, she and I used to talk about this all the time years ago. A lot of people who come into this work, like energy work or whatever it is, if you say you're on this like spiritual path, if you have the intention of like, I want to approach this to be a more loving, more compassionate being, I want to be light and love, like if that's genuinely like your focus or what you say you're trying to do, you will be met with your ego, like believe it. And I think I wholeheartedly, because of what I went through, believe that we do get confronted with our ego in so many ways so that we can work on it because of exactly what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
So again, imagine if you start to realize the power of your energy and your power to manipulate energy and shifting rooms and people and all of these things. If you don't work on your ego, you're doing this from a space of like not the best intention. I mean, think of how destructive that can be. Do you see what I'm saying? So
Oh
I
yeah.
feel like on some levels, whether soul level, whatever you want to call it, I think if you show up like, I want to do this from a space of love, then you have to also go through this like contending with your ego so that as you strengthen energetically, you aren't abusing what you start to become aware of.
Yeah, I think that if you're not aware of the ego and what it's capable of,
Mm-hmm.
then you are abusing the
Yeah.
powers that we have.
And honey, the universe will smack you upside your head if you
That's
try it.
right.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Bryn said, I easily get overwhelmed by lots of people, but before I shield myself, I usually set the intention that it blocks any negativity or darkness, but allow positivity to pass through for the highest good of the collective. That way, I am able to collaborate with people to raise the frequency of the planet and my surroundings without having to worry about psychic attacks.
Yeah, I do the same thing, Bryn. When I try to protect myself, one of the mantras that I use is to not let any negativity permeate my little shield or bubble, and to only allow in things that are positive, and that my positivity can be seen through that protection as well.
Yeah, and one of the things too, just to share, I mean, whether you're in a group or just, I mean, just part of your daily practice, and how I was joking about like this witchy side of myself and my ego that I had to work through. One of the things, and this is not even what our topic was about, but it's coming up with you guys, is like we all have different aspects of ourselves, okay? And even just from being in this realm and what is common in this realm, oftentimes when we think of protection, we think of like, it's not nice. Like, I'm going to knock you out. You know what I mean? Like protection is usually aggressive and like, it's something like fiery and like whatever. You know what I mean? Like, just if you think of like, if someone were going to do something to someone you care about, the type of rage that comes up in you is not light and love. That's like some fiery rage. That is, it's nothing pretty. Do you see what I'm saying? And so there was a this having to come to terms with, do I feel just as protected and safe in my field in the frequency of love without it having to be so fiery? Like, did I trust that the frequency of love was just as powerful as this familiar fiery thing? Do you see what I'm saying? So anyway, I don't know.
Well, I'm going to piggyback off of that too, because there's another angle similar to that I want to bring up. I've also seen from my own perspective and from objective observation that sometimes we use the fear protection shield. So like, we want to be light and love, but we're protecting ourselves, and it comes from a place of fear.
Yes.
So then you actually, it dims down the frequency of love and light when it comes from a place of fear, because you're not actually giving out your love. If you're protecting yourself with fear, that's a freaking fortress, and nothing can get in or out. So like, that permeability of positivity in either direction is going to be blocked out, even though you're sitting there being like, okay, I'm living from love, light and love, but you're trying to do that and you've already built a fortress. So that light and love you're putting out is bouncing right back and it's staying inside. So you're not ever really receiving that symbiotic relationship. And I've seen that a lot.
God, what you're saying is actually, I think it's a great segue into what our next, what do we call these things? Not segments, but you know.
No, I feel like segments, webcasts.
No, but you know how we do like a group, like a couple of them. Series.
Series. That's good. I like series. We'll call it that.
Yeah. So our next series is actually going to be about spirit guides, which was recommended to us by one of our Patreons. So I think where you're headed down this rabbit hole, honey, is a great part that we can bring into that conversation and go deeper with it, because a lot of people want to be intuitive, or they are intuitive, recognize their intuitive gifts, but there's often a block of fear because they're afraid of what they might see, and anyway. So I think this too, like, you guys stay tuned, because this whole protection and the layers of fear and all of this comes into play when we start talking about working with your guides. And
oh yeah.
Ooh, I'm excited.
I know.
For the recommendation. Okay, before we go, let's see. Bryn said, we have to be willing to do the inner work and work through shadows in order for our light to shine. Plus, ain't nobody want that negative karma in the next lifetime. Honey, what do you say?
No, thank you.
Let me tell you something. Some of the most challenging situations I've gone through in this, and a lot of them had to do directly with my ego. The only reason I showed up to like really try to work through it was exactly that, Bryn. I was like, you know what? I don't want to deal with this next time. Like, let me just deal with this now, so I don't have to deal with it later. Oh, bye, Zeke.
Hi, Zeke.
So cute. Kristen says, very interesting. Yeah, this is interesting stuff. Who knew we were going to get so woo-woo?
I know. We did it though.
I know. To leave it to us. So Bryn and Kristen, thank you guys for being here and for sharing with us today. And we hope you'll come back for our talk about spirit guides.
Yes.
That series, that should be a lot of fun. If you guys have any questions about that, be sure to let us know so that we can cover it in the conversation. And for all our Patreons, your bonus content will be up around this, and we will let you know once it is posted.
Yes. Can't wait.
This is our last November thing.
Oh, November. It's my favorite month.
December. This year is almost over.
I can't believe it.
We made
it. High five.
High five, babe, up top. Okay. Well, good night, everyone.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for joining us.